Oh, thanks, Son. I'm just kidding. All right. So really cool TikTok to just put some banter out there before we start this presentation. Really funny, right? So we'll just jump into it. My name is AZ. I've been with Financial Wellness for over a year now. So been having a bunch of fun helping students, doing the whole thing, talking about personal finance, getting that stigma out of the way. We could talk about our services at the end, but yeah, that's me. I'm going to pass it over to San to give her some time for an introduction.
All right, thank you, AZ. Hi, everyone. My name is San Du. I am an international student from Vietnam, third year, majoring in biology. And AZ and I came on board to Financial Wellness pretty much at the same time. So we've been here maybe a year and a half, and super excited to be here today with everyone doing this loans presentation because, like AZ mentioned in the beginning, it's one of the biggest thing and for us as students, right? So super excited to be here and talk to you, everyone about loans today.
All right, brief overview of some of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. 4 bullet points up there. We have types of loans, what are your payments made up of, knowing your servicer, and repayment plans. So 4 big important topics for you to be aware of.
All right, so let's dive straight into it. I don't know about all of you, but when I first got to college, I was really intimidated by, the words financial aid, the word loans, the words, credit cards, saving, budget, and all those stuff. Frankly, because growing up in my household, my parents never actually talked about those stuff at the dinner table. So I was very shocked and kind of embarrassed talking about it just because I didn't know much about money in general. But the fact that all of you are here today joining us for this presentation, thank you for being here and also want to learn more about student loans. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us. We're students just like you. So we've been in, we've struggled through understanding these definitions because they're really grand and large concepts to grasp. So thank you for being here today. And I just want to mention too, just knowing the different types of student loans and, knowing what the benefits, the pros and cons of each are really important in the long run because it can help you save time and money in the long run. So today we're going to be diving into these 5 specific types of loans: subsidized loan, unsubsidized, parent plus, graduate, and private loans. So if you have any questions, like I said, please feel free to ask us and we will try our best to answer them throughout the presentation. So why should we care? We work hard for our money and we don't want to overpay for something when we don't have to, right? So the thing about loans is it can really be beneficial if you know what the pros and the cons are. And so one of our biggest tips to students is that before you take out the loan, sit down, plan out the cost for every single year so you can only borrow what you need. And I put this TikTok here because, and I'm going to read out what the Twitter and the TikTok say. When I left grad school in 2008, I owed $70,000 in federal student loans, a poor choice I wouldn't make again, frankly, because it may have been more than she needed, right? $70,000. For the past 11 years, I've been making payments except for a period of underemployment, totaling about $60,000 in payments. Guess how much I still owe? $70,000. So basically what she just made in payments are mostly, interest that accrues. She never really touched the principal on overall. And we're going to talk deeply about, how this works in a second. But knowing the different types of loan and planning out the cost for it and only borrowing what you need can really save you money and, not let yourself fall into that debt hole at the end after you graduate or start paying back these loans. So, that's why it's super important. That's why we should care about these choices regarding loans that, we'll be making soon. So I know I already talked about the TikTok, but AZ, if you want to play it, feel free to play it too.
So this tweet blew up today, and I think it's important if you're in high school looking to go to college that you hear stories like this. Not saying that college is necessarily bad, you just want to be careful about how much debt you take on to go to school. This Lacey Johnson graduated in 2008 and owed $70,000. In 10 plus years, she's paid $60,000 towards it, and she now owes $70,000. And in response, there's tons and tons and tons of people telling similar stories. So this tweet.
All right, so we briefly prefaced the different types of loans. So now we're going to get into a little bit more specifics about each type of loan, starting with the subsidized loan, which is something we at Financial Wellness like to call the super loan. This is a financial wellness coined term. So if you go around asking people if they've heard about the super loan, they're probably going to look at you super confused and whatnot. But this is for you to have to understand that the subsidized loan is one of the best types of loan options out there, right? So we call it the super loan. It has this specific year, the subsidized loan and unsubsidized loan have a 2.75% interest rate, but that will change from school year to school year. So keep that in mind, keep that in the back of your head. The reason why we call the subsidized loan the super loan is because the government is actually paying your interest while you're in school. So instead of having a loan that has interest that accrues interest on interest, which is part of the reason in the last TikTok why she paid so much interest is because that interest is accruing. That doesn't happen when we have a subsidized loan when you're still in school. So at the end of school, when you have to start doing repayment, that loan amount is going to be a lot smaller because the government is paying your interest. So a really sweet deal with the subsidized loan. So outside of grants, when we're looking at funding a college education, subsidized loans are the next best option for funding your education. If you do have to take out a loan, it is one of the best types of loan options out there. So keep that in mind. If it's offered to you, then definitely consider that, taking your subsidized loan over all the other types of public loan options that are out there. Really good loan.
All right, and then the second type of federal direct student loans is unsubsidized. So it has the same interest rate at the subsidized loan. However, the biggest difference is that the interest starts accruing right away. So when, like AZ mentioned, for the subsidized loan, you don't have to start paying back until you graduate, leave school, or drop below halftime, right? The interest starts accruing right away. So with interest being added to on top of the principal amount you already took out, you will have to pay more money than what you essentially borrowed. So if you can, one of the tips that we give students regarding unsubsidized loan is make interest payment while you are in school. This helps you pay down the overall loan amount, but it also help you boost up your credit score at the same time. So, and then, 2.75 interest rate, but always check on the interest rate before the start of every school year, because right now it's quite low due to everything that has happened in the past year, but this may change and it's not going to stay this low for the years to come. So always double check on the interest rate too. And then, one of the biggest difference is that the payback loan amount will be more than what you essentially took out. So just keep that in mind when you want to borrow for unsub.
All right, moving on to another public loan option. We're talking about the Parent Plus loan, which is a really interesting loan when I always look at it, because this plus loan shows up in your to-do list sometimes, and it's the one thing that you don't actually have to do, which is really odd or whatever. But just keep that in mind if you see that in your to-do list, right? So when we're talking about this year, the Parent Plus loan has a higher interest rate than our unsubsidized and subsidized loan. As you can see, a 5.3% interest rate, but similar to the other two loans and all of these loans in general, you have to check every school year for the interest rate to be aware of what it is, right? So with this Parent Plus loan, it's going to be under your parent, right? So the first two loans we were talking about were going to be in your name as a student. So no involvement with your parent. That's your loan. You have to pay that money back. So keep that in mind. With the Parent Plus loan, it's under your parent and a credit check is required. So they run your parents' credit to see if they are credit worthy to have the Parent Plus loan. And the big difference is when we're talking about our unsubsidized and our subsidized loan, You actually can pay that back 6 months after you graduate school, but with the Parent Plus loan, repayment on this loan will begin immediately. So right after you borrow the money, then the repayment process begins. So little less time for your parents to gather money to make monthly payments, whereas if you have our subsidized or unsubsidized loans, you can save up some money, or like Son mentioned, you can even pay some interest on the unsubsidized loan while you're still in school, and you can even pay most of the loans while you're still in school. That's always an option. So keep that in mind when we have the Parent Plus loan in your student center, right? We have those public loan options like the subsidized and unsubsidized. It's always a better idea to consider those options before we dive into our Parent Plus loan due to the interest rate and some of the complications like repayment beginning immediately and the fact that it is under your parent. But it is an option out there for you, so don't completely discredit this loan.
All right, and then the next type of loan is the graduate loan. So it's another type of federal loan that is available for graduate studies. So you must be a graduate or professional student, enrolled in at least half-time or at an eligible school in a program. So credit check is required. So, if you cannot have an adverse credit history, unless you meet the certain additional eligibility requirements. And if you are curious about, what the eligible criteria are, please check out studentaid.gov, and they have a list of criteria of, what you need to be to qualify for this loan. But as you can see, 5.30 interest rate, so higher than the unsub loan, right? So just keep that in mind when you want to take this type of loan out. And then higher interest rates mean that you're going to have to pay more money at the end. So like I mentioned in the beginning, really important before you take out this loan to sit down, plan out the cost, and just keep that in mind. Okay, interest is going to accrue while I'm in school. So how much do I want to take out so I don't have to pay back an excessively big amount at the end? But even though it's a little bit higher than the unsub loan, it tends to be kind of lower than other loans that we're going to talk about, which is another type, like private loans. So, do, like I said, sit down and plan it out first before you take it out, and just compare, okay, which option is going to save me the most money and save me the most while I'm pursuing my education.
Thanks, Son. And on the note of sitting down and planning out, taking out different types of loans, that is one cool thing that we do at Financial Wellness that we can help you with. So if you make a coaching session with us, one of the 5 coaches will sit down with you and figure out which loan options are out there for you, which ones are available, and which ones are the best for you. So if you have trouble doing that yourself, then book a coaching session with us and we could go ahead and take care of that. And at the end of the presentation, I'll actually put in a loan calculator provided by studentaid.gov that can help you figure that out and sit down on your own to figure out how much interest and how much whole loan amount you're going to be paying off and what your monthly payments look like and stuff like that. But the next type of loan we're going to be talking about, and Son hinted at it previously, we're going to be talking about the private loan. So when we say private loan, these are loans given out not by the government, which are federal loans. These private loans are from banks and lenders, companies, corporations that are lending money to students to help fund an education. But some caveats do come with borrowing from private companies, banks, and stuff like that. We have higher interest rates with these types of loans. So keep that in mind. And there are a bunch of different rates to compare, but there are websites out there that can help you compare different rates, whether it's your local bank or an online lender that specifically works with student loans. So do your due diligence, figure out what all the rates are. Similar to federal loans, they change every single year, right? And some of them even change, from a month-to-month basis because they're not really restricted by that. I'm not too sure about that, but just make sure we are comparing different rates and then making sure we are borrowing the smartest private loan at the best rate if we can. So a credit check is required. So they're going to check your credit and then they may require a cosigner. So someone with trustworthy credit may have to come on and co-sign the loan with you. So when we're talking about a cosigner, if if that cosigner, if you are paying that loan and you're missing those payments and you're not doing very well paying back that loan, it might adversely hurt the cosigner that helped get the loan for you. So keep that in mind, and then be very diligent in picking who is co-signing with you if you do have to take out a private loan and if that is an option. Uh, in the future slides, we're going to be talking about different types of repayment options for public loans. But when we're talking about private loans, most of the time, all this stuff is on that corporation or that bank's terms. So you really have to read the fine print and see what the repayment options are to see what type of repayment you're going to have to do when you actually do have to pay for these loans. So really important to understand, okay, so I'm getting a loan from XYZ company or XYZ bank. They have these types of repayment options. Which one is best for me? Okay, that sounds like a good repayment option. I scanned throughout all the interest rates. This one seems pretty cool. This bank is trustworthy. They look like they're not gonna like steal my money or whatever. They're FDIC. And then boom, now you have a good private loan, and now you know what your repayment's gonna look like. So keep that in mind when we're taking out a private loan.
All right. And then after we take out our loan, a really important question to ask is, when do I start paying back the money that I borrowed, right? So the first payment is due 6 months after you do any of these things. So first graduate or drop below halftime or leave school. So what I want to mention here is sometimes, when we think about graduation, we want to get out there, we want to go and into the workforce right away and start earning money and stuff. But a lot of times I have friends that, take a couple of months to find jobs after they graduate. So where do you find those funds in order to pay back your loan, right? It's the 6 months going to be enough for you to start making those payments back. And if so it's really important to plan ahead and say, okay, do I have enough funds for me to, when that first repayment is required, am I going to have the fund to pay back, or am I going to be in debt? So it's really important to have a budget and emergency fund and planning out for these things ahead of time. And like AZ mentioned earlier in the earlier slide, if you are struggling with this, let us know. We can help you make a budget to consider this, and also help you start this repayment path really smoothly instead of being in debt and have to stress out even more after you graduate.
All right. So loans, similar to a lot of other financial topics, have really big definitions and big words that are like, okay, I have never heard of that in my life. So this is a really cool video to talk about 3 different things about student loans and 3 different topics and definitions that give people some trouble. So Brenton Harrison is a really good expert in talking about these things and to help clarify deferment, forbearance, and forgiveness. So we're going to watch this little video here and then get some more insight.
Welcome back. This is part 3 in our series on federal student loans. In part 1, we covered the details of income-centric plans like pay-as-you-earn and revised pay-as-you-earn. In part 2, we covered discretionary income and how it's used under these plans to figure out what your payment will be. And today we're going to go a little broader. In part 3, we're going to talk about deferment, forbearance, and what happens to your federal student loans when they are forgiven under these plans. Let's get started. Many people hear the terms deferment and forbearance and they really don't understand the difference in terminology. And while it is true that with both of these, you're not paying your loans or your principal or interest back for a period of time, the ways that they could affect your loans are very different depending on the type of strategy you're using and the type of loans that you have. What are some of those differences? Deferment means that for a period of time, you're not paying the loan principal or the interest back on your loans. And you could be in deferment for a number of reasons. You could be in school. You could be active duty military. You could be someone who's had a real financial hardship or can't find a job. All of these are reasons why you could be in deferment. And the way that that will affect your loan and whether you need to handle it one way versus another could be greatly impacted by the type of loans that you have. And to explain that, we need to introduce a couple terms. We need to introduce unsubsidized loans and subsidized loans. See, subsidized loans are typically loans that are taken out for undergraduate studies. And the difference between a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan is with subsidized loans, while interest accumulates on your loans, in periods of deferment, the government pays for the interest for you. So for example, you are in school and you're taking out a loan, say $20,000. As the interest accumulates on that $20,000, by the time you start repaying it, you won't have to pay the $20,000 plus the interest. You will only have to pay the $20,000. That is a subsidized loan. Unsubsidized loans work differently. Unlike their counterpart, with an unsubsidized loan, which you typically find in graduate studies, any interest that's accumulating during that time of deferment, you are responsible for. The government is not paying it for you. So if you're comparing the two, let's say that you're in a period where you owe $20,000 and you have an unsubsidized loan. During a period of deferment, you have the option of paying neither the principal or the interest, or you could decide to pay at the very least the interest that's accumulated. Why would you want to do that? Well, I'll tell you, and we have to introduce another term, capitalization of loan interest. Let's go back to the person who owed $20,000. If they owe $20,000 in an unsubsidized loan, let's say they're in a period of deferment. And by the time they're ready to start paying, they find out that $5,000 of interest has accumulated on that loan. If they have chosen not to pay back the interest during their deferment and they choose not to pay it back before their loan payments start, then that interest will capitalize, meaning it will be added on to their principal. So now, instead of paying back $20,000, they will be paying back $25,000. Now, if you're saying if they're paying the interest, what's the difference between paying the interest and the principal? It's all about their loan payment. You see, if you have a standard repayment plan, whatever you're paying is based off of what it will actually take to pay your loan balance off in full in a given period of time. So if you started and took out $20,000 in loans and have a 10-year standard repayment plan, that payment that you're offered is going to be what's needed to pay off the $20,000 with interest in a 10-year period of time. But if you have $5,000 of interest that's accumulated and you let it capitalize, well, now they're basing your 10 years worth of payments off of not $20,000, but $25,000. And because of that, it could take far more to pay off that loan, which means you have a higher monthly payment. So if you're in deferment with an unsubsidized loan and you have the option of paying the interest on that loan, it is worth considering, because if you don't, you could risk having a higher payment when you come out of deferment and restart your payments in full. Forbearance is similar to deferment in that you have a period of time where you're not paying the principal or interest. You're not required to. But unlike deferment, many of the things that would lead someone to being in forbearance are centered on things such as financial hardships. You find people who are in medical residencies who don't make enough to pay their loans who are offered forbearance, or people who are active military duty. And there are two different types of forbearances. There are discretionary forbearances and there are mandatory forbearances. Discretionary forbearance means it is at the discretion of your loan servicer, meaning you submit a written request, you tell them your situation, and that loan servicer determines whether or not they're going to offer forbearance to you. Mandatory forbearance works differently. With mandatory forbearance, it means you are in a certain program or meet certain criteria. That means your loan servicer is required to at least offer you forbearance. Some of the things I mentioned earlier, like a medical internship, a dental residency, active military duty, those are examples of things for people who would require or be offered a mandatory forbearance by their loan servicer. And it's up to you whether you choose to take it or not. Now, the difference in terms of how it affects your loans compared to deferment is, unlike with the subsidized versus unsubsidized loans in deferment, it doesn't matter what type of loans you have when you're doing forbearance, interest will accumulate on that loan and it will not be paid by the federal government. So we mentioned in deferment, where you have a subsidized loan, you could have it in deferment and not worry about the interest capitalizing before you start your payments. If you're in forbearance, it doesn't matter what type of loan you have. By the time you start paying, those loans will have capitalized if you didn't pay interest during your time of forbearance. So again, if this is something that you find yourself in, you want to make the decision of whether it's worth, even during that period of time, paying the interest that's accumulating on that loan to make sure that you don't have a higher loan payment when you start back up. Now, let's talk about loan forgiveness. When I started this series,
I was on mute. That's awkward. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, this is a really good video. Brenton Harrison really broke down deferment and forbearance really well. So right now I can just reiterate some of the things that he was pointing out and just talk about that a little bit, right? So when we were talking about deferment, he was talking about those subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So when we're in school, we are in deferment, right? When we have those unsubsidized and subsidized loans. So just to point out and to reiterate some things, like I said, those payments are temporarily stopped, right? If you are re-enrolled in school, unemployed, if you have economic hardship, stuff's going on, and then the government will pay your interest on your subsidized and unsubsidized loan. When we talk about forbearance, this is when you don't qualify for deferment. So same thing, payments temporarily stop, or you even might have reduced loan payments and interest will continue to accrue. A really important thing to point out about deferment or forbearance is that to qualify for these, you have to contact your loan servicer, which is really important. If you do the due diligence, if you are in financial hardship or something happens where you can't make your payments, don't neglect that and don't just stop paying your loans, because there are some negative consequences that come with that, right? So it's really important to contact your loan servicer if you know there might be some type of trouble looming ahead where you can't make any loan payments. Then you can contact your loan servicer and then qualify for either deferment or forbearance, right? So really important stuff. Brenton Harrison did a really good job breaking that down. So just keep that in mind.
All right, and then I just want to reiterate another important factor that Brennan Harris pointed out in the video too is interest, right? So what's up with interest? And just a little refresher, interest is the cost of borrowing money. So interest is calculated upon the unpaid amount that you borrow. Like he said, if you borrow $20,000, and with the interest rate, $5,000 is going to be the interest that's being added on to the principal. So our goal here is to pay off the loan the fastest way that we can, and because then we can pay the least interest that's being accrued and we save the most money in the long run. And then the next slide, I'm pretty sure AZ is going to play through, servicer and how to get in contact with them too.
Maybe. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So when you contact your loan servicer, when you take out a loan, for example, you'll be assigned a loan servicer, and through that, you get a contact number. Most of the time, the federal government, if you take out a federal loan, there are different types of servicers that I think it's like a contract. I would say contract. They like contract with. So there are different types of loan people that give out money, right? To put it in plain speak. And basically, these people that are handing out money, most of the time they're financial institutions anyway, contracted by the government to hand out lower interest rate loans to students. Those are the places that you can contact to either qualify for deferment or forbearance, right? So really cool. The next thing we're going to be talking about is this donut, right? Really weird or whatever, but it's a really good picture of how paying back loans might look like. So when we look at the donut, we have a flat payment of $325. So flat payment meaning, there's nothing added or subtracted from the $325. It's just $325. Boom, pay that off, eat the donut, eat the donut. We're making our payments. Boom, 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 right? All right, some tips from financial wellness. Really cool stuff. Pay more than the minimum and tell your loan servicer that you do want to pay more than the minimum, right? similar to credit cards, the minimum payment is the payment that is the least required of us as repayers for different types of loans. So if you are making enough money to pay more than the minimum, then do as much as you can to do that and pay as much as you can of your loan with the goal in mind of having less debt. That is what we are shooting for and hoping for. So paying the minimum is mostly just the interest sometimes, right? And when we're paying just the interest, stuff like that tweet from earlier will happen where 10 years later you've been paying flat payments, but then you start realizing that you've only been paying the interest and you still have basically more than the principal or just about the same with the principal from when you borrowed the money. So try to pay more than the minimum. That's definitely a really, really good tip. And then the second tip is to make an extra payment. So if there's a month where maybe you get a bonus, or maybe you saved up enough money, or find money under the couch, maybe like $300. I don't know. Maybe that happens. Who knows? But basically, you can make an extra payment if you want to help lower that loan amount again and to try to escape as much debt as possible. So really good 2 tips and a really good visualization of what your payments are made up of.
All right. And then I know AZ has done such a great job at explaining, what your servicer is. So he is right. Even though the federal government is the one who is, you just kind of look at when you file your FAFSA, oh, the federal government's giving you money, through loans and grants, all of those stuff. But when it comes to loans, the servicer is the one who's managing it. So it's really important to know who your servicer is and to reach out to them if you have any questions. And then AZ, if you can go to the next slide.
Sorry, I was getting caught up with all these cool coins.
Okay, so log on to studentaid.gov if you want to know more about your servicer. And like I said, it's really important to know who they are and what their services are. Just think of them as maybe your credit card company or lenders, right? If you have any questions, you have someone to reach out to ask questions. Even though they can't help you, they can't give you money to pay off your loan, they can have resources that might be helpful to help you repay those loans. So contact your servicer if you withdraw or transfer school, call to active duty, change your name, address, etc., graduate, need help making payments, or want to change repayment plans. Like I said, even though they won't give you money to pay back your loan, they can answer questions that you may have, or just talk to them and see what your options are regarding your loan payment. Like in my personal experience, it's really good instead of being embarrassed, and the worst thing can happen is say, I don't know, can you help me in any way, shape, or form, instead of looking back on this 10-20 years from now in debt, right? So just keep that in mind and always reach out to them. The worst they can say is no, so always worth a try asking the questions.
All right. So as you can see, there are a lot of different words that start with a word and then end with repayment, because we're going to be talking about different types of repayment plan options that are out there. And then me and San will kind of go back and forth. So hopefully we can flow it well, and hopefully you're not confused. I'll try to talk slow through these just so you can have them in the back of your mind. And then you could also like Google these afterwards to see how they work again. So keep that in mind. So we're going to start with standard repayment, which basically is paying a fixed amount of a loan for a loan term up to 10 years. So depending on the amount of the loan, you'll be paying that off for the loan amount for 10 years. But if you take out, a smaller loan, that loan term might not last as long, right? So if we're doing the tips like we said earlier, paying more than the minimum payment and then paying additional payments, then that standard repayment doesn't have to take 10 years. It can take 5 years. You could cut it in half if you want to. Maybe you get a really good job halfway in. Maybe it's like 3 years into paying your loan, and then you get up, you're a manager now or something like that, and you're able to pay a lot more to your student loans, and then just get that out of the way. So just because you have a loan term of 10 years doesn't mean you have to pay it over 10 years, because Brenton Harrison said it best: capitalization is a real thing. The interest that is accruing is a real thing. So you want to just knock it out of the park as soon as possible.
All right, and then the next one is the extended repayment plan. So this one is very similar to standard repayment, but since it's extended, it allows the loan term to be from 12 to 30 years, right? Depending on the total amount that you borrowed initially. So stretching out the payments over a longer term reduces the size of each payment. So let's say with the standard repayment, your every month you pay back 250. This one, since it's extended over a longer period of time, maybe you only have to pay back $200 instead of 250. So, but even though each of the size of the loan payment is reduced, it increases the total amount that you are repaying over the lifetime of the loan, because the longer it takes you to pay back the loan, the more interest that accrues. So that's the main difference between the extended and standard.
All right, so when we're looking at graduated repayment, it has the same loan term options as extended repayment, so that 12 to 30 years. But basically, you start off with lower payments and then will gradually increase every 2 years. So think about this in the last example that I said. You're going to be starting off with lower payments. Let's say you enter a job or you enter a career where it's kind of like a ladder, right? And then every 2 years, you might get paid a little bit more. You might get a bonus, a pay raise, and then due to inflation, most of the time wages increase gradually over time. So taking that into consideration too, graduated repayment helps in that sense where you get lower payments at first, but then they gradually increase every 2 years, and then you'll be able to pay more and then get those loans taken care of. So that's graduated repayment.
All right, and then the next one is income contingent repayment. So payments were based on your income and the total amount of debt that you borrowed. So monthly payments are adjusted each year as the your income changes. So the loan term is up to 25 years.
Next on. All right, income sensitive repayment. So we have income contingent, and then we have income sensitive. So basically, the loan term for this type of repayment is 10 years, but it looks at your income in kind of a percentage way. So based off whatever the servicer thinks that percentage is, then they'll take a gross percentage of what monthly income you're bringing in. So it's more of like a percentage way of looking at your income, and then using that amount to determine your monthly payments for that loan term.
All right, and then the last one, income-based repayment. So very similar to the income contingent plan, and income-based repayment caps the monthly payments at a lower percentage at a narrower definition of discretionary income. And I know that the last three with the income contingent, sensitive, and base repayment can be kind of confusing because they kind of overlap one another. So if you want, studentaid.gov is a great resource to read into great details about these type of loans too. And then if you're curious about it, you can also ask your servicer about these repayment options too.
Thanks, huh?
Yeah, of course.
All right, so now we get a cool comparison of different types of loans just to give you all a better picture of what it's like paying these loans and the different types of dollar amounts that you can see to give you a better picture of what different types of loans might look like and different types of repayment, right? So using the solar system, huge fan song, good job. We have Earth, Saturn, and Mars. So Earth takes out a $20,000 standard loan with a 10-year loan repayment time. Yeah. So monthly payments of 191, interest 2,898, and then total repaid 22,898. And then as you can see, Saturn and Mars, since I think they're bigger planets. Hopefully I'm correct. Yeah, bigger planets. So their loans are going to be bigger. Yes. So $20,000 loan. This is a graduated type loan. Loan term is 12 years. Monthly payments gonna be a little bit lower, but you can see the interest accrued is a little higher than Earth, and the total repaid is 23,000. Then when you look at Mars, so on and so forth, this is a pay-as-you-earn type of loan, $20,000, same loan amount over 20 years. So our monthly payments are going to be a lot lower because it's stretched out over 20 years, but the interest, because of capitalization, is going to be almost double that of Saturn, so 6,000. then when we look at the total repaid, $26,000, right? So keep in mind, this is a really good example of what different types of loan terms and different types of repayment and how that really affects the total amount of repaid loan amount. So really good example built by San using the solar system. I don't know if I would have used the solar system because I didn't know Saturn was bigger than Earth, but this is some big brain stuff. Thank you, San.
Thank you. Okay, so here are a couple of loans forgiveness options that are out there. And one is public service. So you have to have a federal loan and you have to make 120 qualifying payments. You have to work full-time for a nonprofit, federal, state, or local government. Another program is NHSC awards up to $50,000 to licensed healthcare providers by committing to 2 years in an eligible site. And then the last one is Nurse Corp. So up to 60% paid over 2 years of employment, and working a third year can qualify you 25% or more. So as you can see, these are options for loan forgiveness, but they're very, very specific to the type of employment and type of field that you're going to be working for. So they can be really rare. And they can be, the qualification and the eligibility criteria can be really strict upon it. So these are options out there. And if you feel like you can qualify for them, or you feel like you want to explore them further, please look into them because, as you can see, they're great options if you can qualify and save money in the long run. But these are, even though they're good options out there, they're very specific, and do your research, and like AZ say, really important for you to reach out to your servicer to see if you can qualify for them and take advantage of them.
All right, so when to use an income-driven repayment plan, because I think a lot of confusion comes from like, there's so many different types of repayment options, like what are the pros and cons? So looking at income-driven repayment plans, it will prevent you from missing a payment or defaulting because this amount is directly pulled from how much money you're making, right? So keep that in mind. That's a really good pro. And then following the public service loan forgiveness plan, 96 out of 28,000 people who applied in 2017 were approved. So that's a really rough percentage. I think it's like 0.04%, which is really sad, but that is a fact and something that you have to consider, and why an income-driven repayment plan might be a good option. Because if you don't qualify for the public service loan forgiveness program, then income-driven repayment plan is there for you.
All right, and then one of the most important things is how to avoid default, right? And what is default? Anyway, so first term is, okay, I'm gonna butcher this, delinquency. So you miss one payment and it's going to impact your credit score. So thank you, AZ. So similar to how credit card works, if you miss a payment, it's going to impact your credit score. So this is very similar concept. And default is when you miss 9 months of payments. So these, when you are in default, here are a couple of things that can here are a couple of advantages that you can lose. So lose financial aid eligibility, lose repayment plan options, tax refund withheld, wage garnishment, inability to buy a house, a car, etc., and also additional loan fees. So these are really negative, and I don't like talking about these kind of stuff, but it's necessary to let you all know that this is what happens when we are in default. So, try to do everything that we can to avoid it, because these are not really, happy places and really stressful consequences that we have to deal with, right? So, just try to, like I said in the beginning, it's super important to plan it all out instead of missing these payments, because they can really affect you in the long run too.
All right. On a happier note, here are some tips. I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah. So here's two really big tips for loan repayment or just taking out loans in general. Making payments while in school can actually raise your credit score and put you in a better position later. So when we look at the unsubsidized loan as a really good example of paying interest, like Brenton Harrison said, just to avoid the capitalization, as well as the fact that you're going to have a smaller loan amount to repay if you're making payments in school. If you pay the interest or as much as you can to those loans, it can positively affect your credit. And who doesn't like good credit? So really good tip there. If you can make payments while you're in school, then do it. And then here, if you cannot make your full monthly loan payment, still try to make the interest payment. So like I said, the interest is still a really good way to build credit. And if you're taking out unsubsidized loan, then it's basically like if you pay the interest every single month and you're diligent about that, you're basically taking out a subsidized loan, right? At the end of or you're basically repaying a subsidized loan because you're paying off all that interest. So really good tips there to help your repayment, as well as, like in the first tip said, even help your credit score. So comes full circle, this loan stuff. Pretty cool.
All right, and then a few key takeaways. So first, subsidized is the super loan. So if you have to pick between the subsidized and unsub and the parent plus loan, take out the subsidized first, because the government pays for your interest while you're in school. So the less money you have to pay, right? So always pick the subsidized first. And then the faster you pay, the less interest you owe, and the more money you save overall. So if you can make bigger chunks as your payments, go ahead and do that, because the faster that you pay off your loan, you can get it over with, and then the less interest that accrues on top of the principal amount. And then also make payments while you're in school. So first, it can help you pay down even just the interest and also the principal too, if you think about it, if you can too. And then also boost up your credit score. So I think 3 birds with 1 stone. So that's pretty cool, right? And then lastly, can't make a payment, contact your servicer. Super important to get to know your servicer and ask them if they can provide you any resources and can provide you any assistance. Or they can just be there if you have questions. So feel free to reach out to them. And then I think AZ, the next slide, we're going to talk about our services.
Boom, our services, financial wellness, really cool. So we could break up our services into like 3 different things. We have workshops like this, as you can see, budgeting, loans, savings, and investing. So really cool workshops talking about a bunch of personal finance topics to help you out. We have fun events when we're back on campus, like Paint Your Piggy, where students come in and paint little piggies, as you can see, really cool. And then we have coaching sessions, which we have mentioned in the presentation before, right? And then in the next slide, it'll show our website where you can actually make those appointments with us, one-on-one coaching sessions. You might see my puppy, you might not, who knows? If you do see my puppy, consider yourself lucky, right? So we have those appointments on Zoom this spring and then in the fall as well. So keep in mind, if you want a more personalized one-on-one session, then that's the place to get it.
All right, so this is our website. So go to the main university website, csus.edu, and then just search up financial wellness. Then right up front and center, you're going to see schedule an appointment. Click on that button. It's going to take you 2 minutes, and you can make a coaching session with us. And you can ask us, any questions that you may have about personal finances or, loans in particular to this workshop topic. So please feel free to come to us. We're really nice. And like AZ said, you might see his puppy, you might not. She's really cute. And then, or if you just have a quick question, email us at greentogold@csus, and we will get back to you via email. And then follow us on Instagram. That's the best way to keep up with our events and, workshops that we have for the rest of the month of April. And also fun events when we're back on campus too. So follow us on our Instagram at Sac State Financial Wellness. And then AZ just dropped in the chat box the loan calculator. And then I also want to put in the chat box the link for leadership initiative. But in the meantime, please let us know if you have any questions and we can answer it with the few minutes that we have left. Thanks.
No problem, Dominic. But yeah, thanks for coming to this presentation. Hopefully we provided some value in any way, shape, or form. We are really excited to just talk about loans and any type of personal finance topics, because I know it can be kind of scary sometimes, like thinking about money and anything that comes to school. It's like you like tense your shoulders up when people